know where you're going here, Jeff. I know where you're going.
You don't need it to go viral. You don't need 1,000 people to look at your video. If you just send out one piece of content, don't expect the world and the sky to part, right? Consistently creating content will produce results. We work hard, we play hard.
Yeah, just bomb it.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the 10X Scanning Experience Show. I have got Nathan Jefferson from forget the name of your podcast already here, Nathan. Sorry for that. Content Recruiting Podcast. And you do that with Nate Guggia, right?
Yeah, the Content Recruiter. So 10 episodes in now, Jeff. We're finding our flow. But it's kind of funny when you do a podcast, you'll know this as well. There's so many benefits to doing it that you don't actually attribute before you start actually running a podcast. But even just having the opportunity to talk about industry things in a bit more of a relaxed environment, and the amount of ideas that have come off the back of it are insane. And some of the things we've been able to test since we've actually done the podcast and spoken about certain things that are mad. But anyway, Content Recruiter Podcast with Nate Guggia. Usually record every Tuesday night and release it that week. So enjoying it, and not necessarily the editing, but enjoying the process.
Make no doubt about it. There is a ton of work that goes in, from booking the guests to figuring out what you're going to be talking about and then you got to edit it and push it out and get it syndicated and just getting it all set up. I mean, it's not for the faint of heart, that's for sure.
The process and figuring out the topics as well that make it semi-exciting, because
and doing it every week, right? It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, yeah, but it's fun. I'm enjoying it.
Yeah, but it looks like you got a nice studio set up in your house there, so that's nice.
Yeah. So I guess for some context, if people are watching a video, I was forced out of my house by two unruly toddlers last year. So we decided to go down the whole building a man cave route. So this is a bit of a safe space for me. So yeah, it's where I do all my work. We got a little screen in here for when the football's on, so the guys come over and watch the game, and it's a good little setup. It's good.
Is it a man shed or a she shed? What is?
I want to call it a man shed, but I think in reality it's a place where the kids come and watch films and stuff as well. It's actually, it's quite nice. It's nice to have that little family space, but predominantly through the week, it's where I come and do some work, because I don't know about you, Jeff, but when you got kids in the house and two toddlers, it's kind of difficult to get anything productive out of the way.
I haven't had a toddler in the house in 15 years. So my kids are in high school and college. So I'm out of that phase. Kind of miss it. They were a lot of fun at that age. That's for sure. Teenagers just sit in your room and they play video games all day long or do homework. So
yeah, absolutely. You don't want to wish your time away. You just wish you had more sleep, but it's magic. Yep. It's a good age. So,
all right. So today, the reason I brought you on was I saw a couple of your posts on LinkedIn. You're hilarious. I love that war for talent. He kind of did a history of the war for talent, right? So going back to like I think it was 2010, the war for talent started. 2011, war for talent. 2012. It's just every year.
It's funny, isn't it?
We keep on hearing the same things over and over, right? So today we're going to be talking about how do we create different types of content to address different issues within the entire recruiting funnel, right? You're a content connoisseur. You love building content. So why don't you touch base on that real quickly about content in the recruiting process?
Yeah, this is kind of interesting. So the war for talent post was intriguing, because when I kicked off in recruitment 12 years ago, I remember clients saying exactly the same thing. And we were in the agency world then, but they were all saying the same thing. There's a war for talent. That was in the hospitality industry, hiring chefs. And I was in that space for about 5 years. And it never changed. And so I was just curious. I was like, wait, if I type into Google like 1980 war for talent, what's going to come up? And there was a book published. And I was like, if you go 81, 82, 83, all the way up to the current day, there's always something by either one of the major consultancy firms, the ones that are trying to like get recruitment teams to spend a fortune on their services and basically telling them that talent's so scarce that they're in trouble. And so, it's kind of funny, but the marketing purists are probably going to are going to hate me for this, because I have no or had no real background in marketing up until maybe 5-6 years ago. There was never a degree. I never went to university or anything like that. I noticed that it was becoming that human behavior was changing, right? And so where people were starting to discover opportunities were outside of conventional channels like job boards. And one of the main channels that caught my interest in the early days were basically referrals. Like, we were getting so many people calling us saying, oh, it's not the right role for me, but you might want to speak to this person. And so basically just word of mouth stuff. And I don't necessarily think that was the human behavioral change that I alluded to a few seconds ago, but I just think more generally, people were starting to become more comfortable with social, scrolling the feed, using a phone to do stuff, basically just live a life on social media. And so I kind of 2 years ago, just at the start of the pandemic, when we realized people were going to be on social a lot more, we just kind of got rid of all job board spend, decided to pull back completely on that particular client, and went all in on social ads, both organic and paid ads, and then organic content, and the results were astounding. So that's kind of how I view it. I don't have this methodology for putting different pieces of content in front of people at different stages of the journey, because I think it's hard to measure their thought process at different stages. I get people go through this process of being like, pre-screen, interview, yada 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 stage of the recruitment funnel, but I don't necessarily think you need to position different forms of content for that. I just think being present on social feeds to continue to tell your story in the places that your clients and your candidates exist is probably the key thing here.
So I would have to differ with you, and
Good.
And it depends on what your objectives are, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to build awareness and interest, then absolutely being on those social feeds, getting it out on LinkedIn and Facebook and wherever your audience is, GitHub, etc. You absolutely need to build awareness and garner interest, right? And there's specific types of content that you can do for that. However, if you're trying to push a candidate to make a decision about whether or not they should apply, or push a candidate into taking action, clicking on a link, or even going through an application process or setting up for an interview, then there's different types of content for that, right? Because they're in different stages. So if you look at the 4 stages of marketing, there's awareness, interest, decision, and action. And if you were to push content that is geared towards having them make a decision about whether or not they apply, and they don't even know who you are, then it's kind of lost on them.
And we genuinely, and this is kind of interesting, because we generally I don't view it as a funnel anymore, which I know goes against convention, but I took this view that actually it became really hard to measure interest from people. And I think this came from like HubSpot 2012 style, where you would get like an email which gave you a ranking depending on if you opened a piece of content, you get like 10 points.
Yeah.
And they'd say, all right, he's opened like 6 pieces of content, this guy must be ready to buy. And I genuinely wasn't. I was maybe just clearing my emails or marking everything as read or opening it up or something. And I was just like, if you applied that methodology over to how people actually consume content, does it mean they're ready to buy? Like, if I open 6 emails from like my favorite brands, probably like New Balance or something, if I open 6 emails from New Balance, does that mean I'm in buying mode now? And I wasn't. And so, but having said that, maybe you're right. Maybe there's something in that, in terms of like maybe the content they were putting in front of me was the wrong stuff at the wrong time. I don't disagree. There's probably a case for that. We just haven't done it. We just don't pay too much attention to that funnel kind of concept.
Yeah, I mean, and there's nothing wrong with using a strategy of dump stuff into the top of the funnel, hoping that stuff comes out the bottom of the funnel. This is what traditional recruiting has been, right? Or talent acquisition departments buy a ton of search licenses on the job boards. They buy a ton of job postings for the job boards, and then they stuff into the top of the funnel as quickly as possible, right? They have the recruiters gauge interest and push those candidates to make a decision, and then they push them to take an action of, hey, schedule an interview and things like that. So that's what those recruiters are for, is typically they weren't, when I started recruiting back in 1995, they weren't really to drive candidates into the top of the funnel for the most part. Recruiters were mostly handling stuff at the middle of the funnel, paper pushers. And now it's kind of flipped, right? Especially because resignation nation, not sure if it's happening over in the UK, but over here in the United States, tons of people resigning, and just a shortfall of candidates across a wide swath of different industries, from trucking to hospitality to retail to restaurants to obviously software engineering and IT DevOps and things like that. Now it's not just affecting one, it's affecting almost every single industry there is, right? There's a shortfall of candidates. So almost everybody, every hiring manager has this same pain.
Yeah, they definitely do. And to your point, I think like right now, what I'm seeing is you've got this blend of either sources or recruiters filling that top of the funnel, like you say, through either job ads or through going cold outbound and either one-to-one messages or automating those outreach, which I'm not a huge fan of at all. But you've essentially got this model where you're trying to scale interactions with candidates through like one-to-one engagements. And of course, if you use automated software, you can accelerate that. But whether that's as effective, I'm not sure. I've never used it before. But I think where we saw the opportunity there was actually instead of scaling those interactions one by one or going through cold outbound, actually, if you just start to even try to give value to the people that you want to hire first. So don't focus on filling jobs, focus on just building that awareness piece at the top of the funnel, then naturally these people will start to flow through. And the numbers coming through the top of the funnel will be much bigger, but the points in which they disqualify themselves out of the process have also got to be there. So things like being very clear on salary is important. Things like giving them maybe access to a landing page where you've got a CTO answering questions or masquerading as a CTO answering questions. It's actually a recruitment team doing a Q&A style thing, but allowing candidates to disqualify themselves from a process before they go too far in. So your recruitment team aren't being like bombarded by candidates that aren't relevant. But yeah, we saw content marketing as a way to fill that top of the funnel rather than leaning on recruiters and sources to do it.
Absolutely. And you're not doing anything differently than we are, right? So basically you're giving the candidate more information so they can make a viable decision about whether or not they want to apply, let alone even work for that company, that department or hiring manager.
Yeah. And do you know what, to your point, you kind of, what you said earlier about content at different stages, we've not viewed it like that, but yes, we also do that. We give away like a list of depending on the contracts I've been working in, sometimes it's been really unsophisticated, like a Google Doc, but a list of Q&As, FAQs that old candidates have asked us, like, hey, dive in here and it might answer some of your questions as you're going through that interview process, for example, just to try and keep some engagement flowing. But no, yeah, you're exactly right.
Yeah, but would you send that off to a candidate that had not even heard of the client company?
I think it might. I think I would.
It wouldn't be relevant to them, right?
I would just make it accessible. I wouldn't be publishing it to people that aren't in a process. It's totally irrelevant. Having said that, I suppose it depends on whether that candidate's been fed content and whether they're showing.
It could be part of a larger campaign.
Yeah,
you probably wouldn't make it the first step in that campaign.
Definitely.
It would probably be.
Yeah,
exactly. And that was kind of my point, right?
Yeah.
You have to make sure that you're giving the content to, and this is the whole point of a funnel, right? So the point of a funnel is you give candidates the information they're most likely to be interested in, and that's most likely going to be relevant to them to help push them to make a decision at the time they need to make that decision. So they're not going to need to make a decision about whether they want to apply for the job until they know what the job is and where it's located and what companies it's with. So you need to give that awareness first, and then you have to garner their interest, and then you have to get them to make a decision.
Yeah, exactly. And I suppose the biggest thing in this, Jeff, from my perspective anyway, is you've in markets where candidates have got a lot of choice and there probably isn't a number of people to fill all the roles that exist in the world. starting to talk about jobs specifically and placing content which talk about jobs specifically just feels like the wrong move. And we're seeing that on some data actually, in terms of, we run some social ads to test some things, and actually the ads which point directly to a role and say, hey, we've got this C++ role, come apply. Click-through rate's terrible, applications are terrible, the quality of applications is terrible when they do come through.
It depends on where they are in their process, right? So now we get into, are they actively seeking new employment, or are they a passive candidate job seeker, right? So if they're passive, sending them, hey, go here and take a look at this job description probably isn't the right messaging, if you will, at that where they are mentally
from cold.
right now.
Yeah, from cold.
From
they don't know your brand.
It's like, right, from a
exactly.
cold outreach. So if you were to change that messaging around, and change it from, hey, here's a C++, Java developer position that we've got in for a front end, position, whatever, you could switch that around to, whatever their pain points are that you're trying to address.
Exactly that. Come join this event where our CTO is talking about this. It's a C++ topic, for example.
Right. Or you could set your hiring manager up as a subject matter expert, or talk about how this new technology that the company is releasing is having an impact in the organization, impact in the industry, and here's how and why. Other people in the industry would be definitely interested in that. Or here's a unique way that we're using Java in our application, and talk, have a subject matter expert on there. Obviously, people that would attend a webinar like that would be interested in Java and how, they solved a specific problem, right?
Yeah, and I think like you've nailed it with the whole subject matter expert piece, because I don't know about you, but I've not spoke to a technical candidate for since forever who actually enjoys having conversations with recruiters, especially at the moment when things are so crazy. And I dare say, that's probably harsh. I'm not like tarnishing recruiters. I am one. I'm not saying like we're they're unbearable to speak to and all that sort of stuff. But when you speak to engineers about the amount of interest they get in their profile at the moment on LinkedIn, it's a lot. I spoke to one guy the other week who was getting on average of 14 inbound messages per week from recruiters. Like, he's going to need some sort of
crowbar to get in there.
he's gonna need like a PA. This guy's gonna need to have a PA for all the follow-ups, questions, interview scheduling, all that sort of stuff. It's brutal.
Give me, pay you $50 if you call me back, right?
Yeah, exactly. And so so they're in that motion of just being bombarded, aren't they?
How can a recruiter use content to differentiate themselves from 40 other recruiters that are messaging those same candidates?
Well, I think this is where your point there about subject experts is the key. I think naturally when you can align technical people with other technical people, and subject experts can either give them some value, some knowledge, then or even just going back to basics, Jeff. We've tried tactics before where our subject experts have done the outreach instead of recruiters. Recruiters have done all the legwork, they've got the profiles, and they've just given them over to subject experts. Look, go spend half an hour just reaching out to these people. Engagement rates are so much higher. It's just a different process. Yeah. Imagine people gravitating towards people that have got similar interests.
So I'm going to throw out a scenario for you, right? And kind of give me your feedback on this. So I'm a recruiter. I talk to my hiring manager, and what I do is I write up a really great blog post about this hiring manager and the impact that they're having in the organization, blah blah blah. And then at the end, hey, if you're interested in joining this organization, just put it. And I throw that out to 100 candidates. What do you think? How do you think that would land on those candidates?
I think it depends on. I mean, have these people heard of you before? Is this going cold? Are we
cold email?
I can tell you about my behavior. If someone sent me a random blog post trying to attract me, I'd probably just probably just ignore it, Jeff.
I'd probably go in the. If it was interesting, I might go into the read it later pile, right? But if I were to send you a video of the conversation that I had with that hiring manager, how likely are you to at least click on the link?
Yeah, it definitely get my intrigue because of the content format, and I think there's something interesting there for sure. What There's one brand that always stuck out to me, and it wasn't for the delivery of great content necessarily, but I think it was because of the consistency and the velocity of the content. And so that's you're familiar with Drift, right? The little
Yeah.
chatbot, whatever they call themselves, conversational marketing or revenue acceleration platform, whatever they are now. They had like subject experts in their business. One guy called Mark Killins, who I think he's head of marketing now or a VP or something, but he used to, I've referred to this on our podcast, he used to run around the office with a colleague just basically saying, hey, what are we doing today? What we're building? What's the latest release? Like daily. And you just constantly saw it and you got a feel for the product daily. And it almost felt like you were in the office at times, like they're running around, you're meeting all the different colleagues, talking about different development projects. And honestly, Jeff, it was the most basic setup, two people on a phone, like scrappy as hell, handshaking, loads of mistakes on the phone, on the video, didn't matter. Like just didn't matter.
Because it's real.
And
right?
it's real. And honestly, to like bring it to today, if someone called me from Drift and said, hey, we've got a recruitment role, whatever level it needs to be at, but a recruitment role available, would you come and join us for like 3-6 months? I probably would, because they got my intrigue off the back of those posts from like pre-pandemic times. So yeah,
I want to nail a couple points home right there. First of all, the format of content in which you're sending out the content or to candidates is vitally important.
Yeah.
Video helps sell and tell the story a ton better, right? So use video if you can, not text. You can start it off with text, start off with a relationship, send out a text-based in-mail, send out an email, send out an SMS, whatever. But try and tell and sell your story inside of video first if you can. That allows you to build the relationship and the rapport, not only with you as the recruiter, but also with our hiring manager or subject matter expert, let's call them, right? The next thing that you kind of point was, if you just send out one piece of content, don't expect the world and the sky to part, right? I mean, that's just one piece of content. Consistently creating content will produce results. You know, it's so funny. I've got two clients, right? They're both spending about the same amount of money, and they have access to the same resources, same video editing teams, same developers, and we build landing pages and funnels for them. One client, they'll do 10, 20 videos a month, and the other client will do 2 videos a month. And we're distributing 20 videos for client A, and they're crushing it. Yeah. Client B, paying the same amount of money, but they only have time to create 2 videos, even though we're doing all the video editing and stuff like that for them. And they're wondering why. Well, they're getting good results from the ones that they're doing, but they could have 10 times or 100 times the results they could be getting or are getting right now. So yeah, constantly and consistently creating content is vitally important.
Yeah, it is. And that's do you find, Jeff, that that's a mindset thing? Do you think people expect too much too quickly from these things? And so when they post one and don't see a result, they're like, oh, that was a waste of time.
That's a little bit of it. And then the other thing is they expect, the heavens to move just because they created one, 30-minute video. When, 30 years worth of video content is created and uploaded to YouTube every single week. And they, I don't know why, but they think their 30 minutes is going to garner attention. Even if you send it to the exact right audience, right? Let's say I've got 100 software engineers who are perfect for this position. If I just send them one piece of content one time, chances are they're not even going to see it. It's just they're getting overwhelmed with too many other pieces of content. On average, our studies have shown that it takes 12 to 15 touch points for every single candidate. So if you're trying to make 10 hires, you got to touch every single one of them with something, a text message, an email, a video, a social media, a job post, something, 12 to 15 times before they are willing to come work for you.
Yeah. We've it's an interesting stat. I another message that comes out of this quite often, or is it a myth? I'm going to call it a myth. Is that if you go down the whole organic brand route and you start posting content on LinkedIn, it takes there's this arbitrary number, like 6 months for you to start seeing results. And it's just not true. It's just not true. We were really successful with a podcaster with so basically we hired a podcaster to do some content on MuleSoft, an API platform. Did it for 3 months, organic, just micro clips from a podcast into the feed. Really successful. Got a lot of ambassadors on the show, a lot of people with a lot more reach, people who are running communities of 10, 15,000 people, posting the episodes into Slack groups. A lot of reach happened organically very, very quickly within the first 3 months. That led to very, very clear attributable conversions through the careers page.
That was MuleSoft? What was that?
MuleSoft, MuleSoft. So the podcast is, I've left that particular project now, but the podcast is talking MuleSoft. So
that must be the Manchester accent coming out, right?
MuleSoft. Mule. Yeah, Mule. Channel my inner American. Yeah.
MuleSoft.
MuleSoft. Yeah, it's a problem. But yeah, no, it was good fun. But even my own stuff, I can tell anyone listening to this that I started posting more consistently after Christmas. I was like, hey, I'm going to post every single day on LinkedIn. First week, yeah, but slowed down a little bit and probably committed to 3 content pieces a week on average. And the results have been incredible for me. Multiple inbound requests, multiple people asking if I'm available for contracts. I'm not, but we're building some other stuff. But I can just encourage people to do it.
Yeah.
There are some rules.
It can only help you and your brand, right?
Yeah. And there are some things you need to consider. Do you have a point of view? If you're just posting vanilla crap and you don't really have a point of view, I openly slam sourcing because I just think it's a waste of time when you've got the internet and content. I think content and distribution is much more effective. I don't think sourcing should disappear. I just think it should.
Yeah, we definitely agree. I came from a candidate sourcing. I used to own a sourcing company. Still own an RPO, which does mostly candidate sourcing. So full blown in on candidate sourcing. However, content creation is really the next step. And if companies are not heavily investing in their content creation engines internally or using an external firm to help them build content to not only build awareness about their brand, employer branding, but also garner interest, which is kind of the next step, and then also push candidates to making a decision and then actually applying or going through an interview process, keeping that engagement going. You need to figure out where your content is going throughout the entire funnel. You can't just throw out a text-based job description and hope it's going to hit the right candidates anymore. It's not a viable strategy.
No, it isn't. And you'll see this, Jeff. Sourcing cold is hard. Sourcing when you have a level of brand affinity with the people you're trying to hire becomes so much easier to spark conversations, isn't it? So sourcing is actually really, really powerful when you've invested in the content side.
Yep. And I think where a lot of brands struggle is they struggle around, hey, what kind of content should we be creating, right? Mm-hmm. So in the beginning, they start off with the typical day in the life of, or the culture videos and the employee experience videos. And don't get me wrong, that stuff is all great. And it definitely builds awareness. But most candidates, especially if you're working for a decent sized company, they already have awareness for the most part of your brand. So for the most part, those types of things, the company value videos, are important to have. You have to have them in your library, if you will, but they're not going to move the needle as far as making that hiring manager understand that, hey, the pipeline that I have is being driven from this one video, a culture video. Not going to happen. So that doesn't solve the pain point for the hiring manager, is what I'm trying to say.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't solve the pain point for the candidate. It doesn't solve any challenges for the hiring manager at all. And it's quite interesting, actually, because when you look at some careers pages and you see this, like what you referred to as like evergreen content, where they go and create like a 5-minute long video, for example, and the type of stuff, Jeff, you can guarantee that someone's on it saying, I don't know, no 2 days are the same here, and all that sort of, cliche
We
stuff.
work hard, we play hard.
Yeah, just bomb it coming out of the mouth, like no 2 days are the same, like yada yada yada. Don't you watch these things and just think, oh, it's so boring?
Yeah.
And so we stay with it.
I stopped watching them. I watch them just from a perspective of what not. I tell my hiring managers, don't say this in the video.
But they cost a fortune.
I will be deleting it.
Oh, Jeff, they cost a fortune to make, and they take bloody
$10,000-$20,000 a pop for a 3-minute, 5-minute video.
And how long do they take to create? You've got weeks of filming, you've got months of meetings, and I'm sat over here going, shit, we're going to get this podcast going with our MuleSoft guy.
MuleSoft. Yeah.
There you go. We're going to get this podcast going with the MuleSoft guy with like a budget of $100. Let's see what we can do. And you've nailed like 6 episodes.
Duct tape and paperwork and paper clips.
Exactly, right? A transistor license and a shitty mic off Prime, and in the end you've got like 250 qualified applications throwing through off the back of that thing. Meanwhile, they're still talking about their evergreen content piece over there, and they're on like meeting 5 to discuss the creative or something. So yeah, I think there are just much better ways to do content much quicker and test as well. That's another huge part of this, Jeff, isn't it? If you are spending months and months and months creating a long form piece of content, you're getting it wrong.
Now, are you and Nate, are you guys recording only audio content for your podcast? Are you doing a video for YouTube and posting it up on Facebook also, or what are you doing there?
Yeah, so we usually do a combination. I've got a little setup over here with like a camera. So what we usually do is record on a platform called Riverside.
Yeah,
which is basically like a Zoom. Record on Riverside, chop out the audio for the podcast, use my own camera here just to film the podcast on a separate angle, and then use the micro clips off that for video in the feed.
Good. Perfect. And it costs you maybe $100 to set all that up, right?
Oh, nothing at all. And actually, you probably get if you really put the effort in, you could probably squeeze like 10 pieces of content out of one episode, couldn't you? In terms of written video, audio.
That's exactly what I do. So out of this one episode, it'll probably wind up being about 45 minutes after we edit and cut it all out up and everything. And I'll easily get 10 2-minute snippets out of there. We call them snippets internally. So I'll get my snippets out of there, and that'll help promote the episodes. And then I've got my long episode. And then we take the script or the transcript, we push it up to rev.com, and then we'll take the transcript and we'll turn that into either articles, or some people just want to read the script instead. So get quotes and things like that. It helps us with promoting on other articles that other bloggers are writing, or if they want to incorporate it into their content as well. So people call me about that stuff.
Repurposing king, huh?
Yeah, you got to, man. And doing it all yourself, it helps, but getting a video editing team helps a lot. It makes it a lot better. It allows you to scale the amount of content so much faster because you're not doing it yourself. I'm already booking the guests and I'm talking to the guests about topics, which takes about 15, 20 minutes or so. And then we're doing the episode, which takes 30, 40 minutes. So I've got an hour, 2 hours of my own time invested every week. It's just a lot easier. Okay, here it is. Boom, go do it.
Well, you're right, because then it becomes 5 hours with the editing, doesn't it? And then slowly it starts to take over a full working day, and now it's a problem.
With all the snippets and things like that, and I got other things to do. I got clients to support. So
yeah, exactly.
All right, so besides text-based job descriptions, I know we haven't hit on this quite as much as I wanted to. Besides text-based job descriptions, what other kind of content do candidates find really engaging and interesting? What helps move the needle?
We genuinely try to connect candidates with subject experts based on like educational content as much as possible, depending on the subject expert. So some like to lead with more of a sort of like humor and based approach, try and get engagement, and that's fine. But usually our approach is keep it in the feed on one platform with a subject expert and educational content about what candidates may find helpful. That's the framework. And so to get there, you need to have a niche, you need to understand the pain points, and you need to understand who you're targeting. If you don't have that and a kind of unique point of view, then you're going to struggle to break through the noise, Jeff, I would suggest. You still can, like it's going to take a little bit longer. But having that point of view, understanding the audience and the pain point which underpins it all, is really, really important.
So what you're saying is if you're a generalist recruiter recruiting for, let's say, OR nurses in the morning and then IT DevOps in the afternoon, this strategy probably isn't going to work for you, right? You could, you're just going to be wearing a lot of different hats.
Dude,
if you're doing DevOps though, right? Or give me an industry or a category, if you will, for, you don't have to give me something you're working on, but give me, let's walk through an example.
I'll give you an example of a recruiter that I know in the agency world who I think does a really good job of it. So this is a guy called Ross Townsend, who's over here in the UK in Manchester. And I always call Ross out for this. And another guy as well called Martin Drake. But I think Ross has done a great job. So he's a .NET developer recruiter.
Okay.
Like that's all you see. You go on his profile, .NET developer. He's built this network of .NET developers off the back of running a monthly event called the Social Code. And now they've got like 1,000 developers registered to this event. So it happens every month. They all come along, they give away lots of value. They get other .NET developers to come and speak at this event. And slowly and slowly and slowly, it's just built and built and built. And the amount of audience that he's able to develop off the back of that thing, and we're talking once a month, Jeff, like once a month. I preach about being in the feed every day, like try and get in the feed every single day, but it just proves that if you're consistent, and consistency doesn't mean like be there, show up all the time. It means be consistent in that person's mind. If you're going to say, I'm going to do an event once a week, do the bloody event. Like if you're going to say once a month, great, do the event, but just make sure it's consistent.
Here's what I really think's happening with that. Consistently, there's definitely an aspect of consistency, right? Just like your Game of Thrones is on once a week, right? And then it goes on hiatus for a while, and then it comes back once a week, right? Or your favorite game show is on every day at 7:30, right? Wheel of Fortune, or Jeopardy, or whatever. But if you have a library of content, historical content, right? You could do 30 episodes over 30 months, one episode a month, or you can record one a day for 30 days. Guess what? Yeah. You still have 30 episodes of content, let's say an hour each, 30 hours of content that you can slice and dice and start dripping out on campaigns and all kinds of different matters and get people interested, right? So I say in the beginning, record as much as you possibly can until it hurts almost. And then if it takes you 2-3 months to edit it out and push it out, that's fine. Get it recorded though, because if it's not recorded, it didn't happen.
The repurposing thing is massive. Because also, I don't know how you feel about this as well. When you're sat in front of the laptop in the morning and you're trying to publish content, like if you're not feeling the creative process, you're just not feeling it. And it's impossible to get something out, isn't it?
Yeah. Sometimes I'm just like, ain't recording nothing today. I'm done.
No, exactly. So that's
a couple weeks ago, I had a big zit on my cheek. I'm like, not recording today.
No, I'm not doing it. So, but this is the thing, though, isn't it? There's so many things that can go wrong. You just like, if you don't have
but you know what?
Yeah.
I still had content going out on LinkedIn because I had my episodes that I recorded a month ago.
And this is the thing. What I would say about the event being once a month is that, and the consistency thing is that event one, what would have happened. 3 people would have shown up to a Zoom meeting, and it would have been very easy to after month one to say, I'm not sitting here at 8 o'clock at night for 2 hours running this event for 3 people to show up. Yeah. And I think that's what people do, don't they? They give up too quickly without really giving it time to get to that point. And if you go in organic, unfortunately, You're gonna have to be consistent with it, and it's going to take time. You can accelerate it through paid. We know that we can hit the audience we want through paid social, but if you don't have the budget and organic's away, just be consistent.
Yep. And make sure you're on topic, right? So don't jump from like being a fitness guru on one episode, and then the next episode you're talking about Game of Thrones, and then the next episode you're talking about employer brand. That's not how this stuff. They want to get to know you for the content you serve, right? For the audience you serve. Don't serve 15 different audiences. It doesn't help, right?
No,
so
it's impossible.
And I understand that's difficult for either a contingency, retained search recruiter, or even if you're a recruiter on site at a company, right? Because you've got different roles that you need to service, but not everyone needs content. In fact, studies have shown like 70 to 80% of the roles that get filled without any recruiter involvement at all. They're just pushing the paper along. So focus on the 10, 20% of the jobs that actually need the attention, that need additional candidate flow, and start as soon as the job opens, not 6 weeks down the road, right? Not 10 weeks down the road. It's too late. Your time to hire just got crushed. And doing a content marketing strategy for recruitment is not an overnight, right? Especially if you need to build up that audience.
Yeah, no, you're right. And this is where we lead with this concept of don't create a content strategy to fill jobs. Create a content strategy to sell the company and to sell a better future for someone that might want to join in the future, because there's going to be a point where you've either filled all your jobs, or like to your point there, I don't know, something's going on with the market, but you've got to get into this mindset of if you're going to the market in a transactional state, simply trying to fill roles, the volume of people you're going to reach with that message is just going to diminish. And then there's lots of other factors that will diminish that audience further in terms of like the viability for the role, the skill set, are they relevant? Do they want to join you? Salary? There's lots of other factors that will reduce that talent pool down. Focus on selling the company. And I say my guess, we see it every day with the number and the data flowing through. You'll start to naturally build an audience that will come inbound and want to join you because of the subject experts, because of the people, because of the process, because of the product, because of all the development that's happening inside, because they get to see it on the feed daily. And so you don't have to worry about them scrambling around for talent when a job's live. So that I guess would be my
what you're basically saying is dig the well before you're thirsty.
There you go. There you go.
So let's talk. Okay, so we've got some ideas on what kind of content we should be creating, how we should be creating that content, either through video using Zoom or, Riverside. There's a ton of, video conferencing stuff out there, right? And you can make it look professional. My background looks nice. You're simple, nice, clean background, even lighting. It's not expensive to do all this stuff. I think my light cost like $50. The microphone was $50. My background, these are literally workout mats, like those spongy workout mats. I bought a pack of 50 of them for like $10, right?
I thought they were like nice soundproofing, but they look good.
It's not even soundproofing. It's literally workout mats. So when you drop your weights, you don't crack your hardwood floors, right?
Yeah, love it.
So you don't need to do a whole lot. You just kind of throw some shit. And the shelves, I think, were like $10 at Target, right? $10 for a pack of 2. Right. So this whole studio costs maybe $300 max. Right. Can I go a lot more elaborate? Yeah, but I don't need to. I mean, literally my lighting for the background is an LED strip that's strung up and I threw on the floor 10 minutes before I started the podcast. Right.
But you know what though, Jeff, you can, they'll get to the point where your audience grows and then you've proven the podcast works and drives revenue, and you might decide to go a level above. And this is where I think people get a little bit worried about this sort of thing. It's like, just start. We started filming our podcast, and I think I was in the kitchen. So you're just seeing like the kitchen behind me, and it's not great. Who wants to see that really? But it just gave us a platform to start, and then we moved in here and did some stuff with the wall and lighting and stuff, and it's the next step. And then eventually, something else will happen. We'll add another feature to the background and try to keep it engaging, or maybe go out and do it in a setting, or maybe do a live podcast event or something.
Yeah, like right now you just see the black bar above and below, but once this is all edited out, I've got some pretty video up here, and some scrolling stuff down here, and I'll get the names and the the lower thirds, and the names will come in and out. You get all that fancy stuff later on. Just start building content, because you can literally outsource a lot of this stuff to people on Fiverr or Upwork, for pennies on the dollar. So let's talk about distribution. Once you get whatever kind of content you're doing, right? Whether you're doing a podcast, a video cast, a YouTube channel, or even if you're just creating a single piece of content that you're going to be pushing out on BombBomb or Loom or, any of the other ones, right? And you just want to send out a quick 2-minute video. How are you distributing, whatever kind of content are you doing it via email, text message? Are you doing LinkedIn messages? How are you sending those videos?
Yeah, so we actually primarily focus on the feed, Jeff, for 2 reasons, because I think it's where people spend most of their time. When I say the feed, I mean mainly LinkedIn. I think it's where people spend most of their time, but I really like the amplification opportunity on LinkedIn, and so we will repurpose things for email campaigns, of course. If there's an interesting piece of content, we'll reuse it to promote an event, or we'll create a newsletter as well. But predominantly our go-to is, how do we build an audience in a feed? How do we get to the point where people in this industry are following this subject expert because of their thoughts? So that's our go-to. And honestly, I think when you're
doing what, 3 posts a week to the LinkedIn newsfeed, just organic posting?
Me personally, an average of 3 posts a week. But with companies I work with to attract talent, the model stays the same. So at the start, we try and increase that posting velocity. So we try and go with 5 per week. But if it's at 3, that's the lowest point we'll hit.
So are you doing like putting those inside of LinkedIn in-mail messages to an audience message? Are you sending out any kind of invites with those within just the feed? Are you doing any kind of promotion on LinkedIn? You doing the pay ads and all that stuff to promote the content?
No, we usually go paid on Facebook, because it's a little bit more cost effective and you can reach similar audience. But in terms of LinkedIn, all organic, all in the feed. And we see, this is, at the start when I said this isn't going to be one for the marketing purists, because you can rip holes through this strategy, and I kind of get that, because I think there's a lot more potential with how you can actually use this content to make it more effective. But what we find is, by not including things like call to actions, people start to become more familiar with the brand for reasons like, oh, actually, they've just given value and there is no gated form there to download the content, or I'm actually going to explore these people. Where does this person work? Oh, X company, great. Here's a company page on LinkedIn, follow. Or I follow the person and then I get to see their content the next day, and slowly it just starts to build. And when they see that these people are from company X, for example, or the MuleSoft guy was working with us through Top Coder, a platform in the States, you start to see like the volume of candidates increase after they've posted a clip, which is, or the creator will get an inbound message, or they'll be asked to speak at an event, or like so many things happen that you don't think about initially when you're doing this strategy. So we focus primarily on the feed. We don't use it for going outbound specifically to talent. This is just to build an audience through the feed.
Interesting. We post a lot to the feed. Right now on LinkedIn, we're doing 3 to 5 posts a day just in the feed, mostly snippets. We also post some thumbnails and memes and stuff like that. But 90% of what we post is snippets of the video snippets from the episodes, right? And then we
Yep.
drive it either to our syndication. It's syndicated out on a bunch of different places. But interestingly enough, when we're doing our client stuff, we're doing like career webinars or video voicemail, we usually don't get a whole lot from the feed. We'll post it to the feed, but for the most part, if let's say we're hiring an account executive, right, for one of our SaaS clients, then we'll record that career webinar and then we'll drive it through invitations and messages in our network. And we'll source a list of, let's say, 100 account executives. And then we'll say, hey, hiring manager asked me to send this to you. It's a career webinar with the recruiter and the hiring manager talking about the position.
Yep.
Send them a link. Then we send them to a registration landing page. And then once they register, they got to watch the career webinar.
Yeah. So it's interesting because we take the form away. We're like, no call to action. They find their way organically. So, but it's different strokes, Jeff. Some I dare say your strategy, you do the strategy for a reason. So it obviously works, right?
And this is a big misnomer in what
really
we're doing. Whether
I know where you're going here, Jeff. I know where you're going.
You don't need it to go viral. You don't need 1,000 people to look at your video. That's not the type of content we're building here. I want 100 or even 20 of the right people to look at my video because I only have one, let's say, position to fill. I don't need 1,000 candidates to apply. I don't want 1,000 candidates to apply. I want 10 really, really good candidates.
And this is where I think it's so individual based on a company and what they're trying to achieve. I mean, you said it at the start, what are the objectives? Because you also don't need to go with this far-flung content marketing strategy, which takes months of development to reach, 10 hires in the next 12 months, which is what some companies need, right? So you're absolutely right on that. But isn't this why companies need to test? And I think this is the thing that's missing in recruitment right now is recruiters don't get the space to test this stuff because they're too busy on other things.
That's exactly it. They have to get permission to test, right?
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I've got my next call coming in. So Nathan, thank you. This was an absolute, I could go on for another hour and a half. I'd love to have you back on. We can kind of finish this conversation.
Yeah, loved it. We'll get the better part of Nate and Nathan. We'll get you Nate next time as well. And
Nate and Nathan, you guys, the Nate and Nathan show.
We got it now. But Jeff, I've enjoyed it. Thank you ever so much.
Yeah, Nathan, thank you so much for coming on 10X Candidate Experience Show. Everybody, make it a great one. Bye-bye.